When the Meze Empyrean originally came out in 2018, they were a $3,000 super headphone that had the looks of a Lamborghini with fancy technology that not only made it super light, but also made it one of, if not the smoothest sounding planars available. Despite its price and comments about its questionable mid-bass performance, they were an instant hit and became a star within the headphone community. Fast forward to 2021, and Meze released an all-new model called the Elite here, which takes the technology of the Empyrean and refines it with the focus on better accuracy across the board. You have to pay an extra grand for it, but you get what you pay for, right? You know what you can buy for $4 grand? A Tudor Black Bay 58, 8 AirPod Maxes and some change, Invisalign braces. You can get an Arya, an HD800S, a Jotunheim 2, and a Bifrost or something similar for a full high-end hi-fi setup. You can also buy these 40th anniversary Antals in rosewood from Triangle Audio. And yes, they sound as good as they look. I'll do a review on these later. I just got them, so I'm super excited about them. I just set them up, but we'll dig in another video. First of all, I have to shout out Todd the Vinyl Junkie for loaning me the Meze Elites. He has zero say in what is mentioned in this review, but I appreciate him loaning these to me and for being a great part of the community by creating this loaner program. So let's quickly get into how they compare sound-wise, Empyrean versus the new Elites. Since I wanted to compare these directly, I used the same stock 4-pin XLR cables that came with the headphones. And for pads, I kept the Empyreans in my pad of choice, the Alcantara. While for the Elite, I went back and forth with its Alcantara and thinner leather hybrid pads, which are new for the Elites. So I love doing sound tests with this album. Let's do it again. John Mayer's Room for Squares. So simply put, if you have the Empyreans and you love that romantic, delicate sound with the planar speed, but you also want better definition down low and up top, then yes, the Elites are indeed a step above. You'll notice an instant increase in separation and layering for those high frequency cymbal hits with better imaging across the board, allowing you to pick out other instruments playing in the background. Meze and Renaro, Renaro is the company that makes the drivers, they did a superb job tuning the technology that makes these things sing in the way that they do. Where the Empyreans shine though is the elevated level of warmth and fullness that they can provide. These headphones to me were never really meant to be the last word in resolution. They were meant to be a fun and easy to listen to headphone that's super lightweight, allowing you to listen for hours on end without feeling that grating harshness or fatigue. That said, when I go back to the Elites, I really start to think about selling the Empys here and picking up a pair. The new level of definition across the spectrum is a real upgrade, and I feel that I'd be happier in the end. What pulls me back to the Empyreans here is two things. The easier listenability factor. I feel comparing the two, I can actually listen to these for hours on end while working. I know it may sound silly, but when I'm typing for work, I can concentrate better with the Empyreans. They don't really draw attention to themselves as much as the Elites, probably due to the lack of resolution at the very top, but either way, this is my go-to headphone for working. There's also that increased warmth and fullness that I mentioned earlier in the mid and sub-bass regions. The Elites don't have that elevated bass response of the Empyreans. For many, that's a good thing, as some think that it's a bit overdone on the Empyreans. What I've found is a need to EQ the Elites in the lower range to bring back some of that impact that I was missing, even with the hybrid leather and Alcantara pads. Your mileage may vary. Everything else though, it's very similar. The timbre is the same, the tonality, the sound stage is the same. It's not as open and wide as something like the Arya. Not many headphones are, but it definitely doesn't feel too closed in either. Another thing I have to mention about the Elites is, although there's a definite increase in definition up top, we still have that signature Meze house sound here. So even though you're getting much more information in the higher frequencies, the Elites ever so slightly roll off the very top to help reduce harshness and glare. I'll talk more about it later, but I love this with the Empyrean, and I'm happy that the Elites take this approach as well, even if it's to a lesser extent. Now for some bassy tracks to test the definition and impact down low. American Boy by Estelle. It has that solid bassy beat throughout the song. While the mid bass can be a tad bit murky and undefined with the Empyreans, that feeling is just gone with the Elites. You get better definition down low, and the clarity up top is really a level above. Now switching back to the Empyreans, and they definitely do feel fuller, but I really like what these do with the vocals. Things aren't as separated out, and they're more blended together, but the end result, to my ears, is a presentation that could be arguably more organic, natural, and maybe even more preferable or enjoyable, just depending the mood you're in or the song you're listening to. But at other parts of the song that benefit from better clarity, at 2 minutes and 18 seconds, for example, you get some nice backup vocals. This little bit is instantly more prominent and enjoyable on the Elites. You can hear it better, and just to my ears, it sounds better. The two things I like better on the Empyreans is the superior handling of the mid-range with its more natural sounding vocal presentation, or should I say smoother sounding, and the bass slam. Bass impact and slam is more prominent here. Another thing to note is that super engaging way that the original Empyreans portray S's, the way it presents an S sound, and other higher frequencies, it does carry over to the Elite. There's a level of smoothness with a delicate handling of the frequency range here, which to me sounds lovely, and I associate this with the Meze, just the Meze house sound, as no other headphone that I've heard does it quite like them. Now, I originally was going to say that I still prefer the way the Empyreans do it, as it sounds more organic to my ears, but I had to stop myself, take a step back, and realize that I've had the Empyreans for over a year now, so I didn't want to let my personal bias bleed into this review. There's something to be said where you just keep listening to what you're used to and it's what you expect versus hearing something new and basing your assumptions off this. And that's not fair. It really just depends what kind of sound you like. If you prefer a warmer sound signature, you'll like the Empyreans. If you love every bit of detail you can get or just lean to more of a brighter sound, slightly brighter sound, then the Elites are going to be right up your alley. Okay, let's do some acoustic music. Homoa by Kalani Pia. Really good guitar recording along with male vocals. And in a nutshell, the Elite has noticeably better clarity, definition, and separation, while the Empyrean has this feeling of fullness and warmth. Broken record here, I know, but they're a bit different in that regard. And again, the vocals to me are preferable on the Empyrean. It's really hard to place my finger on it. Is it because the higher frequencies are more subdued that I'm giving more focus to the vocals here? Or is it because the Empy is a bit richer in this range? Maybe it's a bit of both, but either way, I like the end result. As for what may sound more truer to life, when you're talking strumming guitars and you want to get a feel for every pluck and vibration, the Elite to me sounds much closer of what it would be like when you want to get a clearer picture of what the artist actually sounds like, versus the extra smooth Empyrean. Switching to a well-recorded jazz standard, Kissing a Fool by Michael Bublé. Here the Elite showcases just how much the Empyrean can sound bloaty in the mid-bass region. The bass on the Empyrean bleeds too much. It bleeds around, affecting the mids and overall clarity of not only the instrument itself, but it also kind of affects Bublé's voice. The Elite naturally tames those lower frequencies with ease, and the extra clarity up top is very welcome and it's very refreshing at the same time, switching to this, listening to a nice sparkly song. The thing is, I actually prefer the more mid-forward presentation from the Empys here. Bublé's vocals are more prominent and enjoyable, despite the reduction in definition. I'm wondering if you can EQ this and you'll get something very much more similar to this in the vocal region, but out the box, I prefer this. The same applies to the piano playing alongside Bublé's voice. There's more prominence on the Empyrean, but it sounds a tad more, I think, natural and lifelike on the Elite. This may actually be a toss-up depending on the listener, especially after doing some EQ, like I said earlier, to get the vocals exactly where you want them to be. Let's do a fun indie track with a bunch of synthesizers, Fireflies by Owl City. There's no question that the clarity, layering, and separation of the Elites, it's unmatched here. And you're able to enjoy the song in all its fun and detailed stereo glory. What the Empyreans bring to the table is a certain liquid crispness to the vocals. It's like listening to an OTL tube amp versus an OTC tube amp. It kind of pushes that part of the song forward, the mid-region, while letting go of that crystal clear sound on the top end. It's a trade-off. It's definitely a different method of presenting this song, but it's still very enjoyable. It's just different. In the end, I lean towards the Elites here, as the technical aspect is simply all the more engaging than a smoother experience in this case. Last song I felt I needed to mention, I Crawl by Childish, a song with haunting bass and vocals. It feels epic in scope with some fun post-production effects. Long story short, I actually preferred this song on the Empyreans. It felt fuller, more grand, just bigger and more magnificent. The added bass impact from the Empys just won me over. And this is with the Elites using the leather hybrid pads. I tried EQing the Elites down low to match the impact, but I could never get it just right, at least to match this. I was missing a good amount of clarity with the Empys, of course, but I still preferred them here. New Record Day, another popular YouTube reviewer, he described the original Empyreans with the term heavenly. And while I generally agree, I now think that term is better suited for the Elites. Listening to stringed instruments, cymbals, synthesizers on these is absolutely wonderful, and also revealing at the same time, as you're able to pick up on the micro details that were missing or just completely rolled off before with the Empyreans. It's still important to mention that switching to the Empyrean feels more like a subdued and delicate listening experience. It's definitely not as technical, but it's not wrong at the same time. Its focus on warmth and slightly more intimate vocals still makes for a very seducing and engaging time. Both have their merits, but in the end, when comparing these two, I do think the Elite is a true and worthy upgrade to the Empyrean. So let's quickly discuss solid state amp pairings. As much as I love the Violectric V280, this amp is not, in my opinion, the best pairing with a headphone as intriguingly smooth as the original Meze Empyrean. I needed to look elsewhere for an amp to complement the Empys, so this wasn't it. The Elite, however, is just sublime with the V280. You get the details that you were missing with the MP while getting the smooth and authoritative power from the Violectric. With this amp and this headphone, the Elite, I finally feel like I'm getting that signature Meze sound without a noticeable loss or lack of clarity. I recommend the Elite with the Violectric wholeheartedly. Switching to this, the Burson Soloist 3X Performance, it's a more neutral sounding amp that has power to spare. It also has more of a little sizzle effect on the top end, which you may or may not like, at least in its default state with the V6 Vivid op amps, which are interchangeable with other op amp options out there. While this amp isn't my first choice for other headphones that can sport a sparkly or super highly resolving top end, it mated pretty well with the Meze cans. Both the Elite and the MP are able to roll off most of that slightly unnatural sparkle from Burson's Vivid op amps. And in the end, these two complemented each other pretty well here. I will definitely talk about more of my likes and dislikes with this amp in an upcoming video, but just know for now that it's a great pairing. And then we come to this one, the Milo, Wells Audio Milo. It's such a random amp, it looks super odd, it's on the expensive side, but it outputs a crap ton of power, and interestingly enough, the power here is super clean and extremely rich at the same time. The Elite now has this level of authority and control, even at higher volumes when coupled with the Milo. Overall, it feels neutral and natural, yet that rich and enveloping sound keeps you super engaged. I feel these two are a home run, Meze and Wells Audio, and I'm surprised this amp actually isn't more popular. The Milo is truly my favorite amp to power both Meze cans, and I really recommend it, or give it a try and see what you think for yourself, but I don't think you will dislike it. Just note that in its default state, the Milo's gain is cranked up to power the likes of the Susvara, really power-hungry headphones. It's so powerful that even the lowest volume setting here, and the Mezes are at full listening volume. Anything higher would cause hearing damage. If you order this new, be sure to ask for the low gain option, which should work great with the 32 ohm Elites and the Empyreans. You can even, if you currently have one now or want to buy a used one, you can send this back to Wells Audio and they'll apply that mod for you at a cost. So let's quickly compare the Elites to some other headphones here for the top end. Let's start with that. First, the Arya. These are the V2s. They're not the new one with the stealth magnets. Kind of curious how those sound. But yeah, this is the second version. So for the longest time, I thought the Arya was a champion in my collection for high-end definition, other than the HD100Ss, which we'll discuss in a second. The Elites are actually a notch above the Arya for the top end. In my view, it's more vibrant, textured, and defined with the Mezes. Plus the timbre is much more preferable here as well. And just going by my memory of what I'm used to with this, I thought the Arya would put much more of a competition for this trait, but when I A/B back and forth, it shows how outmatched it is with the Elites. I mean, for about $2,400 more, it should, right? And in addition to the increased level of clarity up top, it sounds more natural, more organic, more engaging. That Meze house sound really is a great thing here. And all of that comes with the sound signature from those Renaro drivers. What the Arya wins out on is that sense of scope with its big and open drivers, which delivers this airy sound that can make things sound immense and lively. It makes tracks and live performances sound amazing and enhances the realism there, but for other tracks you can lose intimacy. I've mentioned this before, and you kind of feel further away from the music and the artist in general. The Elites bring you closer to the artist, which for the most part for what I listen to, it makes for a better experience. And on to the legendary HD100S. Okay, here we are in 2021. We're comparing these Sennheisers, which essentially came out in 2009 for the non-S version, and it really is amazing how these are still able to compete with modern $4,000 headphones. So the top-end clarity rivals that of the Elites. It's actually pretty close, but the way the Meze ever so slightly and delicately rolls off the top end makes it more of an enjoyable experience to my ears. I am just a complete sucker for that Meze house sound. What the 800s bring to the table is even more defined highs and better cohesiveness with the top end frequencies being mated with the upper mid-range vocals. I feel things sound a hair more natural and realistic with these in certain situations versus just super clean and precise and fast with the planar technology here, dynamic versus planar. Switching to classical, let's start with violin solos, where either of them is no slouch. Both headphones are able to present strings in a beautiful way with appropriate vibrancy and this bite to them. It's very close to call, but while I like the speed and the separation from the Elites, the HD800S just has the edge on timbre here. Things sound a hair more natural on the Sennheiser when you're talking violins. For bigger orchestral tracks where many instruments are playing, I get a better sense of scope and fullness from the Elites with its superior bass, while it being exquisitely defined across the spectrum. There's no Meze bloatiness here at all. But when going back and forth with the Sennheiser, I end up preferring its superior timbre for the high to upper mid-range for not only instruments, but for vocals as well. It's definitely a different experience, so there's not one super clear winner. It's just you kind of value and you appreciate the way these do things in their own separate way. And for certain times, you prefer the H800S. Certain times you love what the Elites do for tracks as well. Okay, switching to jazz and the HA6A tube amp. It's monstrous. I can't fit it on the table, but I'll get you some B-roll. I absolutely love both of these here. They each bring something to the table. And if you don't know, the HD800S sounds amazing with many tube amps out there. Something that's bright and defined paired with something that's organic sounding, a tube amp, it makes for just many long and engaging listening sessions. What surprised me was how well and engaging the Elites met or exceeded the experience with the legendary HD800S here. Trumpet solos from Miles Davis sounded surprisingly euphonic and for a planar, while still having that technology's precision and speed. Meze still likes to ever so slightly round off those really sharp edges, at least compared with the Sennheiser here. Switching to jazz now, jazz is a genre that can be extremely dynamic with loud peaks and low volume valleys. And the wonderful thing here is the Elites are able to keep up and package all of that in a detailed and euphonic delivery while not missing out on clarity at all. With the H800S, it can feel more raw here, more visceral and unforgiving, which is what many love about them is these traits are kind of great descriptors of actual music being played. You go to see a live show, it's not always just smooth. But with this headphone, I found myself adjusting the volume knob at certain parts of songs, whereas with the Elites, I just let it sit and enjoy. There's definitely something to be said about enjoying music versus analyzing it, and for many that line is completely blurred, so choose your poison here. And while I had the tube amp heated up and ready to go, I continued down our jazz playlist and I switched to my absolute favorite headphone for jazz, the ZMF Verite. Probably the only other headphone here aside from the Focal Clear MG Pros that could give this a run for its money for aesthetics. The Verite, to me, is definitely the more euphonic of the two. Wind instruments sound just sublime. I know I love that word, but it's completely fitting here when you're talking the Verite and jazz. What the Elite offers is a presentation that's both detailed and smooth at the same time, with better separation and precision. No big shock there, planar versus dynamic again. What's great about the Elite is its ability to retain all of those details, but without the glare. And this seems to be their specialty. As much as I adore the Verite, there's definitely some peakiness and some dips in the upper mid-range region that you have to account for in EQ. EQing here is well worth the effort and will pay off immensely. And while this is a killer feature, what makes me reach for the Verites is its mid-forward and more romantic presentation. It feels warmer, more intimate, so you're closer to the music. And for all of the Elite's top-end detail retrieval with a smooth twist at the very end, I miss the more fleshed out mid-range of the Verite. So between the two, I think the Elite is the easier listen, as brass instruments on the Verite can definitely sound peaky at times, but I actually love this realistic quality of the ZMFs. Glare or not, I think this headphone really showcases what jazz on a tube amp can sound like at its best, and the wonderfully imperfect distortion of being at a live event versus the polished drive towards sonic perfection in a recording studio made by a producer. It's like hearing a bass connected to a guitar amp on a stage instead of hearing studio monitors fed from a mixing board controlled by a producer. Just two different approaches. I know I'm kind of generalizing here a little bit, and of course I'm still listening to a recording, but before you go wagging your finger, I still say the Verite and a nice tube amp can sound more like a live event than say a solid state amp with a planar. If you think I'm talking, try it for yourself and let me know what you think. That all said, between these two, for jazz, I choose the Verite for the superior mids and euphonic qualities, as I said before, but you definitely won't get a subpar experience with the Elites. In fact, if you generally prefer the technical aspects of a song, you'd probably prefer the more detailed experience with these. And lastly, let's discuss the Focal Clear MG Professionals, one of the longest names out there that I've in recent memory. It's an odd headphone to add to the mix, but I have them here. It's also a loaner from Todd, so thanks again, Todd. And getting to the sound, it's pretty much the same story as the Verite's, better retrieval on the Elites, with a more mid-forward presentation on the Focals. What I absolutely love about the Focals is the stellar presentation of voices. I feel that the timbre here is spot on, and the singers, both male and female, sound more like an actual person versus a reproduction of one. This is really hard to get just right, and I have to credit Focal for finding the spectacular formula here in the Clear MG. As compared to the Verites, there's less glare. Similar to the Meze, the Clear MG Pro is a headphone you can just leave on and enjoy. You don't have to touch the volume knob as much. It's just a smooth delivery with a clear focus on the mid-range. It's not as defined across the spectrum as other headphones in its class, the Arya, the HD800S, but also the Verite and Elite. They all surpass this for detail retrieval. But what you do get is a balanced headphone that is not only excellent for both male and female voices, but this also sounds pretty damn amazing on tube amps. For something called the Clear, I'm kind of shocked it does so well in the mid-region. I thought I would be hearing like micro details up top better than the rest, but that didn't seem to be the case. So, should you sell all your existing headphones and go all in on a Meze Elite? Actually, let's start with the other question. Will I personally sell my Empyreans and pick up an Elite? At first, I was so used to the wonderfully smooth sound from the Empyrean that I didn't want to upgrade. Then I heard the strings, then the synthesizers, then more and more I slowly started picking up on what I wasn't hearing from the Empyreans, now on the Elites. But like I said before, there's something about that fuller and more intimate sound that I love about the original Empyrean. It's just hard to deny, and it's very enticing. Now, time will tell, and to be honest, I know I'll miss the Elites when I give these back to Todd. I'll remember just how sublime they sound with synth-heavy music or classical or jazz, letting me enjoy every detail up top with superior definition down low, something I wasn't getting with the Empyrean. And this is all with that romantic Meze sound. As for upgrading from something like an Arya to the Elites, it's definitely a big jump. It's also over twice the cost. You'll miss the wide open soundstage, but I know you'll love the way that these present vocals and the mid-range in general in a more organic and lifelike fashion. You'll admire the premium looks and feel, and I believe you'll reach endgame status for multiple years. And when I say endgame, to me that just means you'll be satisfied for a while. You know how this hobby is. But during those first few years with the Elite, I think you'll focus your efforts on finding the right amp and DAC combo instead of looking at other HP models. It's that good. In me personally owning the Empyrean, the only reason I reach for the Arya now is because sometimes I want to hear those micro details that I'm missing. With the Elites, I simply don't have that problem. So probably more information than you wanted. Another long blown out video by me, but I hope you got something out of it. Hit subscribe, like, and subscribe to me on Instagram. Check out Todd's store in the description, and I'll see you guys in the next one. So long.